Pandemics by Matt Stansbury. For my topic, I decided to talk about pandemics. Pandemics are an outbreak of an infectious disease or sickness that can cause extreme major social, economic, and political disruption on a global scale and can also cause a significant increase in the mortality rate in the world. Pandemics are extremely important to study and understand so we as a society can learn to take the necessary precautions to prevent future pandemics. In recent years, we've also experienced what life is like in a pandemic. We have learned the struggles as well as how to overcome them. We have also learned how society reacts to them and how news and social media portray them. And in the informative world we live in today, pandemics possess the power to not only cause sickness and death, but to also elicit fear and panic in the population. The novel Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel is a novel that follows separate characters at different points in time who all encounter a pandemic. Our characters are Edwin, who eventually dies from the 1918 influenza pandemic, Morella, who experiences COVID-19, and Olive, who dies from a futuristic disease SARS-12 in the 23rd century. We are then introduced to our main character, Gaspard Jacques Roberts, who is a time traveler from the year 2401 and tries to go back in time and save everyone from their certain fate. Pandemics are a very frequent subject in this novel, with some pandemics being familiar to us and some that have yet to come. Throughout the story, the author tries to add subtle lines in the novel that the reader can relate to in our experiences with COVID. For example, in January of 2020, when Gaspard goes to shake a man's hand, which he rejects since, quote, "I've just gotten really into Purell since this thing in Wuhan hit the news," quote, refers to the very beginning of COVID when people were told to wash their hands as they had heard of a horrible sickness in Wuhan. Another example is in the year 2203, when Olive says, quote, "The truth is even now. All these centuries later, for all our technological advances, all our scientific knowledge of illness, we still don't know why one person gets sick and another does not, or why one person survives and another dies. Illness frightens us because it's chaotic," quote. The meaning of this quote is that we may not be able to prevent a pandemic from happening or who gets sick and who doesn't. Sometimes we have no control over those things. But one thing we can do is to minimize what frightens us so much, which is the chaos and stress of being sick. So by being able to control the fear and learning from our previous illnesses and pandemics, we will be able to overcome the panic. Lastly, one other idea this book makes you question is, quote, "the strange lesson of living in a pandemic. Life can be tranquil in the face of death," quote. In other words, it makes you question what's really important. The thought of a major disease taking away the things and people you love and care about really makes you appreciate what you have in life before it's too late. Over the recent years, it has been tough to tell the difference between fact and fear with the news media. Early on with pandemics, news media sites discovered that with the intimidation of skyrocketing cases and deaths with COVID, this would significantly increase their views. With that, we will look at how Democratic and Republican news sites portrayed COVID in order to increase their viewership, as well as how news media dealt with pandemics compared to social media, as well as my novel. The first article we will look at is an article by a left-wing news site, NBC News. The article titled, quote, "COVID-19 case surge forces Sweden to rethink strategy praised by U.S. conservatives," quote. In this article, it talks about how the Swedish government made the decision to not lock down, hoping it would lead to widespread immunity. After they had done this, cases started to surge, putting lots more in hospitals. After NBC, a liberal news network, heard of this, they instantly wanted to show that an idea that had been praised by U.S. conservatives was wrong. They did this as they know who their audience consists of, and they knew that the viewers would love an article like this showing how they were right and conservatives were wrong. By doing this, they are contributing to the problem of fueling fear and distracting us from the true nature of the problem, the disease, and making it all political. After some time, studies revealed that by allowing people to develop an immunity actually did pay off, meaning that the Republicans were right and the Democrats were wrong. In fact, Sweden has fewer excess deaths than most other countries, according to the OECD. Now we have learned how the Democrats turned a serious pandemic into a political viewership battle. Let's see how the Republicans did it. When COVID was first introduced, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the chief medical advisor to the President of the United States, said regarding how we should handle the sickness, quote, "I think we should really be overly aggressive and get criticized for overreacting," quote. The Republican news site Fox News did the opposite, completely trying to downplay the entire thing and saying things like, quote, "They're scaring the living hell out of people, and I see it again as like, oh, let's bludgeon Trump with this new hoax, or at worst case scenario, it could be the flu," quote. The reason why they said these things is because they're trying to appeal to their intended audience, who are far right wing. As a couple days and weeks passed, Fox hosts had pivoted warning viewers about the dangers of coronavirus, even though they had majorly been downplaying it in the weeks before. By doing this, they were very hypocritical and realized that by saying how dangerous COVID is and what a threat it is, that creates a bigger audience for them. On top of that, Fox News host Sean Hannity pushed back on criticism of his early coronavirus coverage. And when this article was being made, Fox did not respond to a request for a comment about the situation. Now let's see what this video is all about.
This is yet another attempt to impeach the president. And sadly, it seems they care very little for any of the destruction they are leaving in their wake. We must test for the virus in order to stop the spread of it. What could be a very great recession. Some predicting even a depression.
At worst case scenario, it could be the flu.
I feel like the more I learn about this, the less there is to worry about.
I was about to say the same thing. We don't have immunity to this virus. It's a new virus. It's a pandemic strain of a virus we haven't seen before.
All the talk about coronavirus being so much more deadly doesn't reflect reality. Without a vaccine, the flu would be far more deadly. We are facing an incredibly contagious and dangerous virus that is moving across the world from one hotspot to another.
We're going to call out anyone and everyone who's using this virus as a political weapon against the president. The standard flu every single year kills tens of thousands of Americans. We are now entering what will be the crucial defining 15-day period as it relates to this virus, where we must slow the spread of coronavirus.
It's actually the safest time to fly. Everyone I know that's flying right now, terminals are pretty much dead. We have a responsibility to slow down this virus and to think of other people during this time. And so if you can keep your distance and prevent someone from getting close to you that might be sick, you could save your family, you can save the elderly, and help our country as a nation.
It is absolutely disgusting that Democrats are seeking to use this complex virus to score cheap political points. This dangerous health crisis could dovetail quickly into a political crisis, already feeling economic ramifications of it all.
After watching this video, we can clearly see the hypocrisy of saying it's no big deal, then days later saying how it may cause the next big recession and how it is extremely deadly and dangerous. Next is social media. Social media plays a vital role in how billions of people in the world receive their information. However, the problem with learning information off of social media is that there is no real way to see if someone is credible for their information or if the post is even real. For example, in the first post we have a photo from Facebook about how Italy has run out of hospitals and that people who are sick with COVID have to stay outdoors. They are then threatening the audience by saying, quote, "Think twice before you put your foot outside the house," quote. Once again, using the factor of fear is the most effective way to get views, and when you get views, people think you have some sort of credibility, even though this post is absolutely false and the image has been completely taken out of context. Nonetheless, the more scary the information is, the more entertaining it is for people on social media. When looking at the intended audience of social media, it is usually for age groups ranging from 10 to 30, with roughly 80% of this age group using social media. Especially by having young kids on social media, they will believe just about anything, as they do not know the difference between right and wrong, nor do they care to find out if something is actually real or not, as they simply do not have the attention span to solve this problem, and instead they'd rather just move on to the next post, which can cause a huge disaster. On top of that, having major influencers who these kids look up to spreading misinformation is an even bigger problem, as they carry a responsibility of providing their followers with the truth and doing and believing what's right. Once again, this isn't always the case. For example, in 2020, famous actor and playwright Woody Harrelson posted a video to Instagram saying, quote, "Meanwhile, the Chinese are bringing 5G antennas down, sharing false rumors about a link between 5G and coronavirus." This clip was also taken out of context and was from a protest in 2019 completely unrelated to COVID and happened before COVID ever existed. Conclusion. The pandemic has been shown in many different forms and ways. However, when it comes to portraying it through the use of media, whether it be through a novel, news media, or social media, they all have one thing in common. They all need and want to make money. And just strictly reporting on the facts doesn't sell. They all try to distract from the main objective being how to overcome the difficulties and challenges of the pandemic itself, but rather they add fuel to the fire by frightening the public and increasing panic because at the end of the day, fear sells. However, in more recent times, it seems that we've been able to start to pull our act together and persevere through a dark time in all of our lives. I hope through my presentation you were able to understand some of the differences and similarities between my book, news media, and social media. Thank you for listening.